When it comes to investing your money, whom can you trust? I'm Dan Ringer, and we'll talk about investment fraud right now on The Law Works.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.
The Law Works is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
When it comes to your money, it seems as if everyone wants you to trust them. But who can be trusted? My guest is attorney and senior vice president for investor education at the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, John Gannon. John, thank you for joining us.
Oh, Dan, thank you for having me on your show.
The Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, it's got an acronym, it's called FINRA. What's FINRA?
FINRA is a private sector regulator that regulates every brokerage firm and broker in the United States. So that means we regulate about 5,000 firms and over 500,000 investment professionals who are licensed through FINRA.
Tell us a little bit about who these people are. These are not banks.
No, they're not. They are individuals and organizations or companies that sell securities. So stocks, bonds, mutual funds, other types of investment products that people buy to invest with.
Why FINRA?
Well, FINRA was created under the federal securities laws back in the 30s after the 1929 crash and the subsequent depression. And what Congress did was they wanted to create a private sector organization called an SRO, or self-regulatory organization, that would sort of be the first line of defense with respect to regulating brokerage firms and brokers. And so every brokerage firm in the United States is required to be a member of an SRO. And so we write the rules that brokerage firms and brokers are required to follow. We examine them to make sure that they comply with those rules and regulations. And when they don't, we bring enforcement actions against them, which can be anything from a censure to a fine to a suspension from the industry, and in the worst cases, a bar from the industry.
It sounds kind of funny to say that you're a private organization, that the industry is self-regulating, but you have an awful lot of police power to say, you're wrong, stop it, get out of the business.
That's right.
Is there no government aid entity that does that?
Well, yeah, there is. The United States Securities and Exchange Commission has oversight over FINRA as well as the entire financial markets. And they regulate everything from the public companies that issue securities that we all know, Kellogg's, IBM, those companies that sell securities, they regulate that. They regulate the mutual fund industry. They regulate other aspects of the industry. We focus simply on brokers and brokerage firms.
Okay.
But we have the SEC has oversight over us, so they make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing.
How are you funded?
We are funded from the fees that we collect from firms and from transaction fees based on trades on the markets.
Is membership in FINRA mandatory?
It is mandatory that a firm be a member of a self-regulatory organization. FINRA is the largest self-regulatory organization in the United States.
Your title, I find intriguing. You're talking about regulating an industry, but you're the Senior Vice President for Investor Education. How do you get involved in investor education?
Well, first of all, how did I get involved?
Well, how does FINRA get involved?
Well, FINRA gets involved because we feel that one of the best forms of investor protection, and that's what regulation's about, it's protecting the consumer, or in our case, protecting the investor. So what we feel is one of the best forms of investor protection is education. Because when we get involved on an enforcement front, where people have already been harmed, I mean, that's a difficult situation. It's going to be difficult for us to get all their money back. They're obviously going to lose the time value of their money because it's going to be held up while an investigation's going on, while there's litigation.
And by time value, you mean the money they could earn on their money.
Exactly. And I mean, that you can't give back. A regulator just can't get back for an investor. And in some instances, especially when you're involved with investment fraud, when the money goes into somebody's pocket, buys fancy cars, houses, trips to Tahiti, the money's gone. So there's no money to get back for investors. So that's why education is so important, especially in the investment fraud area.
Okay, now let's talk about how you come to FINRA. What are your qualifications to be doing this?
Well, I've been a securities regulator now for 20 years. I started with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission, actually in their Division of Enforcement. So I started investigating different types of violations of the federal securities laws, from financial fraud involving public companies cooking their books, to looking at insider trading, to looking at cases of investment fraud.
And so you come now to education to tell people about what to watch out
and
for.
I felt, one of the important focuses at the SEC as well as at FINRA is helping investors. And one of the best ways I think that we can do that is through investor education. And that's why I'm so excited about what we do at FINRA to help educate investors and help protect them so that they don't fall for the next scam.
Well, how does an investor, a consumer, know what to look out for? What should they look out for?
Well, they don't. Many times, and one of the things that I think a big misconception out there is that people that are taken in by scams or mistakes in the market are somehow dumb or gullible. But our research shows that that's simply not the case, that very smart people can be taken by scams. I mean, stockbrokers have been scammed, doctors, lawyers, accountants, financial professionals. I mean, many people. So it's a smart person's crime.
The victim is the smart person.
Right. And the typical victim in investment fraud is a male, 55 to 65 years of age, college educated, higher income, financially literate, which is a surprising fact. They've had a recent health or financial problem in their family, and they typically have a couple of weaknesses. They're overly optimistic, which means they're a glass half full type of person who wants to believe what they hear, and they're self-reliant, which means that they don't typically seek a second opinion from an accountant, a lawyer, or a financial professional that they've worked with.
So they're convinced they know what they're doing.
Yes.
And they may not.
And they may not. What we found among that age group is that many of them are overconfident. In other words, their level of confidence exceeds their level of knowledge. And we believe that that's part of the reason they're open to investment fraud.
And from what you describe, it kind of sounds like there might be, maybe desperation is too strong a word, but there's a hint of a strong desire to do something now. Maybe you said a health problem or some kind of financial reverse, so they're looking down the road and they're saying, I see retirement coming, I don't have enough.
Yeah, and I think, Dan, you're right there. I mean, I think at that age, people are starting to look down the road to retirement and asking themselves, do I have enough money for retirement? What should I do? Here I have been, hopefully doing the right thing, saving up in my 401k or other type of retirement plan. But now, I'm starting to think about, living in retirement. Do I have enough money? Am I going to be able to generate enough income from that money? So I think they start to get concerned about managing their money. And that perhaps opens themselves up to an investment pitch that's fraudulent.
I have seen many times people who will come and say, what I planned to retire on was my stocks, or I was going to retire on the value of my house. In fact, they were pitching reverse equity mortgages there for a while.
Right.
I haven't heard of those recently because the value of real estate has dropped in the last couple of years, sometimes precipitously and dramatically. The stock market has been down, then it was up, then it was down, and people are looking at that and say, I've got to do something else. I've got to do something different. So these people are vulnerable.
Absolutely. I mean, and you're right, Dan. I mean, where do you put your money today? In the bank?
Under the mattress.
Under the mattress may be the best thing to do.
Yeah, in fact,
in some ways.
Get out of the stock market. If you could look back a couple of years, it was probably better to get out of the stock market, put the money under the bank, and maybe 6 months from now, get back in. But there was a lot of losses to be realized.
No, there's a lot of challenges. I mean, interest rates on bank deposits is very low, on CDs is very low. The stock market right now is very volatile. As you said, it's going up and down. People are nervous about where it's going to go, so they don't have a lot of money in the market right now. Bonds aren't yielding a lot. So where do you put your money? And unfortunately, that's where the fraudster can enter the picture.
I got to ask you this question: what with everything you know and all, where would you put your money now?
Well, I mean, I believe in the capitalist system. So, I believe in, buying and holding. So even through the 2008, 2009 recession, I stuck with my investments.
Yeah, I have told many people that if your investments go to absolute zero, we've probably got bigger problems than just the value of your investments.
That's right.
Well, when people are in this vulnerable window, or even if they're not, maybe they're just greedy. Yeah, that's the biggest problem I have seen over the years. It's just greed. People want to make more, they want to get more, and they really don't care if the guy hawking it is wearing a T-shirt and standing in front of their door, or whereas behind a desk. If he can promise them something, they're going to take it. So what should you watch out for?
Well, what we've done is through the FINRA Investor Education Foundation, we funded research that looked at how fraudsters use tactics, persuasion tactics, to take money from investors.
We're talking about investment fraud. My guest is attorney and senior vice president for investor education at the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, John Gannon. So what do they do?
So what they do is they have a number of tactics that they use. And these tactics have different names. You don't have to remember the names. What the important thing for the investor to understand is to step back from these tactics, because all the tactics are designed for you to make an emotional rather than a logical decision. And so the first tactic, which I think everybody will understand, is what we call phantom riches, which is dangling the prospect of immense wealth or a high return. So like promising somebody, oh, you're going to earn 100% return on this investment in 3 months. Or it's guaranteed. I guarantee you you're going to earn 13% a year, year in, year out. That dangling of wealth is a very emotional thing that grabs people. That's the greed factor to some extent, pulling people into an investment.
I don't have to do anything but give you my money.
That's right. It's easy.
And you're going to triple it? Or
and triple it, well, that's the promise, but you have to look beyond that, and that's what we say, step back from that. How realistic is that? But then the other tactics start to come in. Source credibility, very important. Why am I wearing a suit today instead of flip-flops and jeans and a t-shirt? Because I want to look credible on TV. Fraudsters use that too. Anyone can wear a suit. Anyone can have a fancy office, a fancy car, fancy credentials on their wall. But all that can be faked. And that's what we try to teach people, is credibility can be faked. That you really need to know that you're dealing with a licensed financial professional to protect yourself. That, all that aura of credibility, it can always be faked.
Years and years ago, I encountered a professional, not an investment professional, but someone who was trying to assure me that she knew what she was doing and she was well credentialed. She had invented, in retrospect I found, invented a resume, completely took a friend's resume, doctored it up a little bit and used that, had letters of recommendation from people all over North America, every one of which was fraudulent, and nobody saw it coming. Nobody. And in the investment business, it's just as easy to do that.
Yes, it is. And, now there's all these professional designations out there, certified this, registered that. And regardless of how many, alphabet soup, acronyms are behind somebody's name on their business card or their letterhead, you still need to make sure that somebody's licensed. That's a big protection to you, because if somebody's licensed, you can check into FINRA's database called Broker Check, find out that they are in fact licensed, how long they've been in the business, what firms they've worked for. Have they skipped around from firm to firm, which might be a little suspicious.
So you have a professional biography on.
Yeah. Any enforcement action or disciplinary action, customer complaints, securities arbitrations, which is the way an individual can, sue a broker or brokerage firm. All that information is publicly available for free on our website, saveandinvest.org.
Save and Invest. Is that one word?
Yes, it is.
Saveandinvest.org.
Yep. or they can call an 800 number, 1-800-289-9999, to check out any firm or investment professional that we regulate.
Okay, we've talked about phantom riches and source credibility. What other tactics?
Well, another tactic is called social consensus, which is if everybody's doing it, it has to be okay. And so often this is used in what's called affinity fraud, where a fraudster will target a religious group, an ethnic group, or a minority, or some sort of social group. And what that works is, if if I think you've been in on the investment, I'm going to assume that maybe you've done your due diligence and your homework for that investment. And therefore, I'm going to take a short circuit and not do mine. And that's a big mistake.
So I checked it out, so you're going to rely on the fact that I checked it out.
Or I think that you checked it out.
Yeah, if I did.
Right. But the problem is you may not have. And what may be a good investment for you may not be a good investment for me. Because your position, your objectives, your financial goals may be totally different than mine. Your risk tolerance may be different.
I may just simply have more money than I know what to do with. And so you think you can take your relatively small amount and ride on the coattails of somebody who does know what they're doing.
Right.
Not a good idea.
Not a good idea.
What else?
Well, another one is called reciprocity. And this is very common today. It's if somebody gives you a small gift, they expect a gift back, which in the case of fraud usually means a large gift, your money. So they may buy you a free dinner, a free lunch, give you a free DVD, a free book. And the whole purpose is we are trained from basically childhood. If somebody gives you something, you need to give something back. Well, the fraudster is going to use that $10 lunch or dinner to have you give them $10,000, $100,000, your life savings. And that's a mistake. Is if somebody just gives you a small gift, that doesn't mean that you should give them your life savings.
And they may, in fact, give you something back on your investment at the first reporting period.
No, and that's how many types of investment scams work, because that sort of builds the credibility of the investment. Okay, they'll give you some money back. They maybe have some investors who are early into the fraud who get their entire investment back. But what do? They're just going to promote the investment for you. We had one fraudster tell us he never had to sell his investment. His early investors sold it for him because they told their friends about the good deal they were getting.
What do you do as the investor? What would you, if somebody is looking at an investment, what steps should they go through?
Well, I mean, what they need to do is, first of all, they need to understand their own investment goals and objectives. A lot of people just go out there searching for an investment or investment professional without really understanding what they need as far as investment advice. And that's really important first step. But they also need to understand that fraud's out there and how to protect themselves from it. And that's what we've been trying to do through the Finner Investor Education Foundation. Is we've developed a program that teaches people these persuasion tactics, that teaches people that they're at risk. Most people don't think they're at risk of fraud. But we have a risk quiz on our website, saveinvest.org, that you can take to see if you open yourself up to fraud. Do you invest in high-risk investments? Are you open to pitches, which means do you open unsolicited mail? Do you take unsolicited phone calls? Do you read email that you've received from people you don't know?
Nothing good ever comes in an email from someone you don't know. Just adopt that as a rule.
That is a very good rule. And I mean, but people that fall for fraud are typically, people who will open the mail. For example, when we were doing all this research, the fraud victims that were in our sample were twice as likely to take a survey we sent them than the non-fraud victims were. So they were just willing to respond to unsolicited information they received in the mail.
So somebody watches this show, they hear these things. Are they now fraud-proofed?
Well, they are. We've proven through field experiments that if you go through our program, that you'll reduce your susceptibility to investment fraud. Does that mean that every single time that you'll avoid fraud? Perhaps not, but we really think our program can really help people protect themselves.
We're talking about investment fraud. My guest is Attorney and Senior Vice President for Investor Education at the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, John Gannon. I'm Dan Ringer, and this is The Law Works. You've also got information that's available on a DVD. It's called Tricks of the Trade, Outsmarting Investment Fraud. Now, I'd like to have one of these. How much is this going to cost me?
It's not going to cost you anything, and you can go to our website, saveandinvest.org, and order one. What we've done is because, while I wish we could go around the country doing live presentations of our program, Outsmarting Investment Fraud, there's only so many resources available to do that. So one way to get the word out about our program is we put it on DVD so that people can order it, show it in their home. Hopefully, most of the people that get the information that we want are probably smart investors already, but they probably know somebody, a friend, a family member, a coworker, somebody that lives down the street who, when they watch the film, they probably know that they need that information even more than they do. So one thing that anybody who gets the DVD or sees our program is tell somebody that you think might be a victim.
And one of the things that I've noticed in my experience is I may hear it on Monday, I may understand it on Tuesday, but by Thursday or Friday it started to fade a little bit and I just don't remember it. I know I heard something about it, but I don't remember it, and it's a good idea to refresh that education.
Absolutely. And I mean, the good thing about this program, especially with respect to the persuasion tactics, is you can actually practice identifying these tactics every day because they are actually used in both legitimate as well as illegitimate services.
One of the hobbies I have is to parse commercials, and I will listen to every sentence, listen to every word, and then I will turn to whoever I'm with and say, do you know what that really means? What did that say to you? They're always wrong. The commercial is always overwhelming. And
you see these tactics every day. I mean, how many, going out of business furniture sales are there? And I mean, that's one of our tactics, scarcity, you have to get in today. So, going out of business is while we're closing down. So if you don't buy today, you're out.
This offer is only good for the first 100 people, or it's only good until
right.
5 o'clock tomorrow, or something like that.
These tactics are everywhere.
I've got to ask you this, because what you have described has occurred so many times, and sometimes notoriously. Let's talk just a little bit about Bernie Madoff.
Sure.
Who was he?
Well, Bernie Madoff was a very well-known Wall Street, institution. He was president of the NASDAQ Stock Exchange for a period of time. He ran a brokerage firm as well as an investment advisory firm. So he was a very credible individual who, through his investment advisory firm, put together a fraudulent investment. It was a complex strategy that involved buying and selling stocks and options with the idea of guaranteeing his investors a 13% return year in, year out, which should have been a red flag for a lot of people. And he targeted people that he affiliated with, either through his country club or his synagogue. And he also made it a very exclusive deal, which is sort of, getting to credibility. I mean, if it's exclusive, you have to be special to get in. That entices people into a scam.
Well, it sounds like a good thing. How do I hook up with him?
Well, unfortunately, the people that did, lost all their money. And the sad thing is, many people put all their money with Bernie Madoff and, lost their life savings. Well, some of those were very wealthy individuals. Some of them were not. I talked to one woman who lost her savings to put her child through college and had no place to turn. So it wasn't always very wealthy people that got taken by these scams. And that's important for people to understand. Many people may not think that the next Bernie Madoff is going to come and knock on their door. But what they need to understand is there's many, many, many Madoffs all around this country. And if you have retirement savings, equity in your home, cash value in your life insurance policy, you're a target.
It sounds like, and Bernie Madoff is in prison. If somebody doesn't recognize that name, he's in prison for a very, very long time. It sounds like the underlying rule is don't give any one entity all of your money.
No, I mean, that is just basically the number one principle of investing is diversify your investments. And, the sad thing is in most fraud cases that we see people hand over their life savings, which is just a huge mistake. I mean, diversification, it reduces your risk. It reduces your risk in the market, but it also reduces your risk of being taken by an investment fraud. if you lose, $10,000 or $100,000 in investment fraud, but you still have money left over, you probably can retire, and you can probably still, have your investments. But unfortunately, a lot of people give all their money.
The number one problem is, when all is said and done, greed.
Well, greed, and I think a lot of people are very worried about spending 20 or 30 years in retirement and whether they've saved enough in the first place. So they're looking for that extra edge or that extra bump in their investments.
John Gannon, Senior Vice President for Investor Education at the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority, FINRA. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Dan.
Thank you also for being with us. On behalf of the LawWorks, I'm Dan Ringer. Good evening. On the LawWorks webpage at thelawworks.org, you'll find a listing of recent The LawWorks program topics and additional information about this show's topic. If you would like to recommend this program to a friend, you'll find a video of the program at the LawWorks website. You'll also find free video and podcasts of previous programs on YouTube and iTunes. If you would like to suggest a topic for a future program, or if you're a school teacher and would like to receive a free copy of this show for classroom use, send us an email to thelawworks@comcast.net.
The LawWorks is produced in cooperation with the West Virginia State Bar, the Mountain State Bar, and the West Virginia University College of Law. The LawWorks is made possible by the generous support of the West Virginia State Bar, the Monongalia County Bar Association, and by a major grant from the West Virginia Bar Foundation, promoting public knowledge of the law in West Virginia. The West Virginia Bar Foundation, the philanthropic organization for West Virginia's legal profession and justice system.
From West Virginia Public Broadcasting.